Hi, I'm John Ruhlin, founder and author of Giftology. And today on Dov Baron's show, we're going to talk about why gratitude is the competitive advantage. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at the power of the Law of Reciprocity and what it can do for you, your leadership, and your business growth. As you're tuned in, I want you to remember that you can also chat with us now about this show that you're listening to or past episodes by going to our page on Facebook. It's Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast, that group right there. It'll allow you to chat with the host and with other listeners and talk about the subject. If you're a new listener, new viewer, strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. And remember, you can find us on iTunes, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. We always need your help in staying relevant, though, so please do me a big favor. Go over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And when you do, go to that Facebook page, Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty group. And when you get to that podcast page, you can tell us that you've done your review, and we'll give you a shout out live on air. So you can remember, you can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, across the entire U.S., ranging from Philadelphia to Florida. We're all over. If you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And you can also find us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also find us on Google Home and Alexa. Simply say, play Dov Baron's podcast. All right. Thank you again for sharing the show with everybody you know. Let's strip it down, dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity, you know that creating an edge that will make you stand out in what can be a very difficult world where everyone and everything is competing for attention. So how can you not only grab the attention that you need, but use it to grow your business and your leadership in a way that will tattoo you and your brand onto the hearts and minds of those that you wish to influence? Well, stay tuned, because our guest today on this episode is John Ruhlin. Now, John is the founder and CEO of Giftology Fulfillment, specializing in strategic gifting programs, spreading generosity in the corporate world. His second book was called Giftology, and it was released back in 2016, and it is a monster. His company does business with some of the top leaders and organizations around the world, companies like UBS, Wells Fargo, Chicago Bears, Antonio Spurs, there you go, San Antonio Spurs, MGM, Shell, Chevron, Orlando Magic, Memphis Grizzlies, Miami Dolphins, Caesar Entertainment, Darren Hardy, Shep, and Shep too, and Jeffrey Gitomer, and even, yes, John Maxwell, and that's just to name a few. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome John Ruhlin!
Oh man, Todd, I'm ready to fight, man. I'm ready to go. I feel like I'm walking into the boxing ring. Thanks for that. Yeah,
Buffy, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm twitching.
That's good, man.
Awesome intro.
Well, we're really happy to have you here. It's been a while coming. You and I met almost a year ago now through our mutual friend Steve Sims, who you had shared the stage with, and our listeners know Steve because he's been on the show a couple of times, and he's also a megastar and a terrific guy too.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah. Steve opened a lot of doors for me. He's a fun dude.
He's a really great guy. I really enjoy his company. So I want to start off with a rather bizarre question, because I'm a rather bizarre gentleman. And that is, if you were in a spousal relationship with leadership, what would that relationship look like?
I was in a spousal relationship with leadership.
So you're married to leadership. What does that marriage look like?
Well, I think that 18 years ago when I started, it looked a little different than it does now, fortunately.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I didn't even really consider myself a leader when kind of getting indoctrinated into it when I interned with Cutco. But I would say that right now, I'm becoming a better listener, and I'm doing a better job of surrounding myself with amazing people. I think early on, I thought being a leader was doing everything and not showing weakness. And I would say in the last few years, I've been more vulnerable with my team and able to admit when I suck, admit when I screw up. And I'm getting better at hiring A players and surrounding myself with A players versus hiring the B or C player, because that's what I thought I could afford at the time. So.
Yeah, I like the analogy of the marriage, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that, I know you and I both know that divorce rate is extremely high, and one of the reasons it's high is because people are dumbasses and don't ask for help. Right? There was research done in the early 2000s, and 60% of men whose wives asked for a divorce were shocked. And I'm like, if you were shocked and your wife asked for a divorce, you might be one of the very rare few that it took you by surprise and there was no signs. But that is so minuscule. But the truth is, she's probably been telling you for years that she's about to walk out of the door, and you've just not paid attention because it worked for you. And I think that is how it is with leadership. Well, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, so I don't need any help. And of course, people are leaving, because they suck. As opposed to, I'm the common denominator. Maybe I suck.
In all of these relationships, I'm the only. Yeah.
That's why I like that example. So let's jump in for a minute right into you and your company and what it is you do. So tell our listeners, tell our viewers, what is Giftology? Because it's a really great play on words.
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that they're going to hit the snooze button or check out because they're like, wow, this seems like a really warm, fuzzy, soft, not ROI kind of topic. And so most leaders are like, they want the nuts and bolts. They want, and at a core level, what it is everybody says relationships matter. Everybody thinks that they'll give lip service to it. And really what Giftology is a system for making our words of, hey, it's all about people, with our actions of how we show gratitude, how we make people feel, make sure that they're congruent. And we happen to pick a topic in action. It's kind of like the 5 love languages. There's 5 different topics. Gifting is one of them, words of affirmation. They're really all love. And we teach people our playbook and systemology? No, our systems to
I try to throw ology on the end of everything.
I try to throw ology on the end of it. And
but really, welcome to the podcastology.
Tried to blend. It's the first time I ever tried to blend those words together. But really, it's just a process to be intentional with how we treat our relationships. And so we've chosen to do that with gifting. Most people view that as corporate gifting, swag, tchotchkes, and really the opposite of what a real gift is. And so at a core level, that's what
so tell us the difference, because I think that is the assumption right there. I think you nailed it. The assumption is this is swag, free shit, that you get. And in our conversation, one of the things that you made very clear to me was that this is what I love about it, by the way, is that it's very personal, rather than swag, which is let's send everybody a MAGA hat, or let's send everybody, something that we send. There's some tchotchke that nobody gives a crap about, and is going to be, oh, that's nice, and then it's going to go in a drawer and nobody gives a crap. Yeah. Tell us the difference.
Well, at a core level, like a gift by its very nature is recipient focused. It's all about them. You wouldn't go to a wedding. A wedding is a great example. What would you do in your personal life? You go to a wedding, you want to get the couple, Tiffany's vase. You'd engrave their couple's name, maybe their initial, their wedding date. You'd make it all about them. their taste, their preferences. In business, we do the exact opposite. We make everything about our colors, what we like. If we like steak, we take people out for steak dinners. If we like to travel, we take people on trips. If we like golf, we take people golfing. And we slam our logo on it, which is the antithesis of a gift. It's all about the giver versus about the receiver. And so there's a big difference, especially in Western culture. Eastern culture gets this at a very deep level. You go to an Asian culture, they'll give a Rolex away. They'll go all in because they realize that it represents the value of the relationship, and they'll personalize it, even the way that, like the Japanese hand a business card.
Yes.
They view it like a gift.
2 hands is a gift.
2 hands, and they kind of bow, and there's reverence. In Western culture, we slam our logo on crap and put in cheap box, order as much of stuff as we can from China. It's so horrible. And so a gift by its very nature should be all about the recipient, their name, their spouse's name, their family name, their likes, who they are as a human being. And it should be congruent with, if you're world-class, best-in-class, first-class in every other area, the gift really is a tangible reminder. It's an artifact. We call them artifacts anymore.
Sure.
I hate the word gift. It feels like something from Amazon that's cheap.
Right.
And an artifact is, something that you'd save out of your burning house. Like you'd go in and you take a few things that are meaningful to you. And so that's really the big difference. There's a big difference between promotional items and swag and gift cards and crap, which is what I have a list of 20 things, and almost every company on the planet gives out like 18 of the 20. It's disgusting. Yeah. And we're the opposite of that.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting when I think about what you're saying there. What flashed in my mind was how many cards have I got? And to be honest, in the past, not so much now, but certainly maybe 10 years ago, did I send out cards that were my logo as a thank you? So I want to thank you. It's got my logo on it. And what turned me around was I got a card from somebody who I'd met at a conference. And it was a thank you card, and it was handwritten, which for me is very important. It was handwritten. Yeah. But on the front of it was a photograph of me and them. And I went, oh, brilliant. Now I know who the hell this is, because you get home with a pocket of business, you go, what, who was that? I think that was this person. And you're like, and then you go online and check, and you're like, oh no, God, it wasn't that person. So right away it told me who it was, but it made it about that relationship right away, as opposed to about, hey, come and see ABC Inc., because I've got the best spingles you could possibly have. I'm like, oh yeah, there's another one for the bin. Yeah.
The marketing department oftentimes gets involved in the sales department and wants everything to be branded to the company. And what they don't realize is people don't do business with companies. They do business with other individuals. Humans buy from another human. That's why a financial advisor firm loses an advisor. And oftentimes that money goes from UBS to Wells Fargo or from whatever to wherever. It's because of the relationship. And so we've lost touch with the understanding that, I won't let anybody send out a gift. Like I send out $350,000 in gifts personally. I won't send out a gift unless it comes from me personally with a handwritten note. It's not from my team. You didn't do business with my team. You did business with me. Yeah. And I'll empower my team members to send gifts. And it comes from them, not the Ruhlin team or the Giftology team. Companies do that all the time. And I'm like, you just spent millions of dollars to actually have a negative consequence because the other person realizes it was automated. In relationships, depth of relationships, emotional connection isn't automated. There's systems. You can systematize things, but if you don't get the details right, game over.
Yeah. In my it's interesting because there's a direct correlation around loyalty. Of course, loyalty between companies, but in my last book, Fiercely Loyal, one of the things I wrote in there, an example that I think really personifies what you're saying. And I talked about why people leave companies is because companies don't know how to appreciate people is one of the reasons, particularly with millennials. And the example I give is a software company in Seattle. The sales team did fabulous. And so what they did was they rewarded everybody in the sales team with season tickets to the Seahawks. Right? And people were very delighted, and it was exciting, and it was wonderful. And I tell the story of these two guys who were in the pub that night, and one of them is watching the game over the head of the other one, over the shoulder of the other one, and he's talking about how excited he is that he's got Seahawk tickets, and isn't this amazing? And, what a great company. And the guy he's talking to is facing him, not the TV set, and he's like, yeah, it was great. And the reason is because the guy looking not at the TV, doesn't like football, that doesn't care about football, and actually feels incredibly disrespected by the company because they didn't bother to take the time to give a shit about what he actually likes, which could have been the ballet or soccer or something else altogether. And so it seems like what you're really saying is that willingness to get inside the head, the heart, to really know what matters to that person. Am I on track here?
Yeah. And what people don't realize, sometimes people hear our stories and they're like, well, John, we can never afford you. We can never do $7,000 experiences. I'm like, you're missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a way, like something that's pretty universal is we all have an inner circle. Yes. I don't care whether you're 25 years old or 75 years old. Most people have a spouse or a significant other. They have pets, they have kids. And so there's certain people in your world that if somebody takes care of my daughters and makes me the hero to my daughters, that's the same as anybody else that has kids. We all want to be heroes to our kids. So there are certain processes that you can scale, but most people they're not thinking through the eyes of the employee, the eyes of the client, the dealer, the prospect, or whatever else. And they don't understand that there are certain things that are super important. And if you really want to go super deep, then you do need to personalize it down to, like you said, like I like football, I like ballet. What does my wife like? What does my assistant like? All of those things. And that's difficult. It's a lot of work to scale. And most people want the bot that sends out an automatic message to 1 million people. And that can work for the masses. But when you're dealing with 7, 8, 9-figure deals and you're dealing in the big boy world, like it's all comes down to trust and relationship. And you can't, automate that across 10,000 people. Like it has to be more one-to-one.
Yeah. But as you're saying, I mean, that's very high level stuff, 7,000, 10,000, maybe even a bigger ticket gift that is at a very high level. But as you said, we're not limited to that. I mean, you can do that with somebody at a much lower level. Can you give us a little nudge in how to do that for those people who can't, say, spend even a few $100 on a gift, but want it to be a gift? What would be an idea?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it. Like I talk about like the power of a handwritten note that's thoughtful. I tell people all the time when they're starting out, like the amount of handwritten notes I wrote to mentors, advisors, key people. And I'm not talking like the cheesy standardized note across the board that you just whip out in 3 minutes. I'm talking, the type of note that might take you 30 minutes or 60 minutes to write. You take and write that on nice paper. Like the paper we use now is metal. I write on a sheet of steel. Our letterhead is a sheet of steel. And it costs $9. People think we're insane. I'm like, you'll spend $9 on a drink. You'll spend $9 on a flashlight that ends up in the trash can and think nothing of it. I'll spend $9 on my steel letterhead, write on with a Sharpie, and I'll send out a couple thousand of them a year, and people frame them like they're art. So it's not about the dollar amount. It's going for impact, and it's going for where everybody else goes really cheap. Like people go cheap on gifts, they go cheap on letterhead, they go cheap on these sorts of things. I go not 1 or 2% higher, I go 10,000% higher. And in areas like Facebook advertising and trade shows and all the crap, normal stuff where people are having a pissing match over. I have one client spend $6 million on a trade show, and I'm like, dude, what does that actually produce for you? And they're like, we're hoping to break even. And I'm like, you're risking $6 million in capital and all of your employees' times to break even? Like that doesn't even make any sense. What if you took 1/10 of that amount and took your top 1,000 relationships and spent $600,000 on them? What do you think the response would be? They're like, they'd be blown away. And I'm like, and it costs you 90% less. So the handwritten note is super powerful. If you can take the handwritten note and actually read it to the person in person. There's been a study, it was done a few years ago, where both your gratitude and feeling and happiness goes up, and the person you're reading it to goes up radically, and it costs you nothing but time. Time and thought to write that note and to honor that person. It costs, an 18-year-old college student or an 88-year-old chairman of the board, like doesn't matter. Anybody can do that.
So I have a card for you that I've handwritten, but I read it to you and then hand it to you.
Yes.
That is so cool. I'll tell you why. Total personal story here. My wife and I are very big on cards, right? We write each other cards on birthdays that are not, happy birthday. They're very meaningful. Birthdays, wedding anniversary, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we both, over the years, we get these cards, and both of us have interesting writing. That's start like their penmanship is interesting. So invariably there's a word we can't read. right? My wife wrote this beautiful, I don't know what the hell this word is, right?
Yeah.
So completely by accident, I said, you know what? I don't want to read the card. And she go, what do you mean? I want you to read it to me. And we started doing that with each other. So we write each other these beautiful cards, but we read them to each other. And I know, particularly as a guy with ADD and with dyslexia, how much more impactful that is.
Oh my gosh.
Have that. And so it's like, so that's exactly what we've done. And we've done that for more than 10 years of our 20-year marriage. Whenever we give cards, we always read them. And what's interesting is that we've trained our kids to do it. So at Christmas, they give a Christmas card. It can't be Merry Christmas. It has to have meaning. And you have to stand in front of everybody and read the card to the person before you give it to them. So that also makes them go, oh, I can't get away with Merry Christmas. Thanks for being a great dad. It actually has to have some meaning. And it's so powerful.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know why I haven't taken this into my own. I think I've read things to my wife, but not every time, and definitely not with my kids. We just did a Father's Day experience and we were hosting some people that happened to have their flight canceled. And the guy who is also a father of four made everybody go around the table with my kids and say, name something that you love about your dad. And that vocalization, it's personal. It's powerful. I mean, I got teary eyes. My wife, sharing things. It was, so I think the written word combined with the spoken word is, and it has to be, people say, well, it's the thought that counts. And I'm like, that's BS. It's the thoughtful thought that counts.
Exactly.
And I try to hammer that into, to all of our clients. I'm like, no, it's not a check a box thing. This is, people feel whether it's sincere, whether you took the time, whether there's meaning behind it, or whether it was, oh, we got to get a bunch of crap out at Christmas.
But there's also another piece here. And the other piece is this, and the piece is the law of familiarity. And I see this all the frickin' time with people, the CEOs and leaders that I work with, who, they send someone else to buy their wife a present. And I'm like, you need a slap upside the head, right? Yes, use your assistant to do some research for you, but you need to go buy it. And I see that, we see that, you and I see it all the time, which is in business, which is we're chasing new business. And, it's me, I'm direct, it's like we're chasing new skirt and we've not noticed who's with us. And so that willingness to step out of familiarity and say, who was in my circle already, who is it who's already impacted me, who we had this ongoing relationship that I haven't validated today, I haven't recognized. I have a list on my phone in my favorites, and they are I call them my advisory board, right? They do advise me on business, but they are outstanding. They're my personal tribe. I thank them every night in my gratitudes out loud. My wife and I thank them out loud in our gratitudes. They don't hear that. That's great for us, not for them. But I go through that list once a week, and I personally send them a message and say, I just want you to know, you fucking rock. And here's why. And then I'll give a reason. And I think it's so easy, particularly in today's world where we're so bombarded and everything's coming at us at 50,000 miles an hour. It's so easy for us to take shit for granted, take people that we really care about for granted, or people who are great for business. And the thing that I love about what you're doing, John, is that this is not about swag. This is about gratitude. Talk to us about the importance of gratitude. Where did you learn this? I mean, because we're all told, be grateful, don't take people for granted, but it becomes, blah, 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 and it doesn't really land or connect. And God knows it might not even with the people who are listening to this. But how did you get that? How did that go so deeply home for you?
Well, often, the best things happen when we're desperate. And we're most open when we're desperate, right? I mean, so I grew up poor, farm boy, was going to go to med school and interned with a company called Cutco. And I was looking to pay for med school. I was looking at, $250,000 to $500,000 of pre-med. So I interned with Cutco, and my life changed because of a girl I was dating at the time. I'm 19, 20 years old, and he's an attorney, but he's a rainmaker. I mean, he can open up doors with anybody. Every deal in town comes his way. And when you're poor, you notice when people are generous. At least I did. I could always tell when somebody's, because when you don't have, you notice when people have.
Of course.
And he was 60 years old, and He owned the banks in town, the oil wells, the real estate that became the big, shopping plaza.
Right.
And he was also radically generous. Like he would find deals on things like noodles and something silly like that. He'd buy a semi-load, literally a semi-load. Everybody at church the next Sunday, 200 people walk away with noodles. And there was no, hey, send me a referral. Hey,
No
send
agenda.
me a deal. Zero agenda, just who he was.
Right.
So I looked at his life. He could take 3-hour lunches and still make it rain. He was always calm, in control. He had a wonderful life. He had 3 girls. He just had and people loved him. He was top of mind and liked, and everywhere he went, he had conversations with people. And I'm like, it was almost like a movie. It's like, I want that life.
Right.
And I was like, what's Paul doing? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
he treats the assistant and the janitor and the receptionist the same way the CEO, and he doesn't ask for anything. And because of that, he reaps this reciprocity. And from a faith perspective, it's like we reap what we sow. And I'm like, I want to be sowing that in 40 years. And so I started, when I pitched him the idea of the knives, I thought all of his clients are men. I'll buy pocket knives, blah, blah, blah. And of course he twisted it on his head. He's like, John, I'll buy pocket knives, but what about, I want to buy paring knives. I'm like, you want to give a bunch of grown men CEOs kitchen tools? That's weird. Why? And he said, in 40 years in business, the reason I have every deal in town is because I found out if you take care of the family, everything else takes care of itself. So I started to model what I was seeing with Paul, because I'm like, in 40 years, I want to be him.
Yeah.
And that was 18 years ago. I've been, teaching and helping companies do exactly what I saw Paul doing, which was build deep, meaningful relationships using gifts and gratitude, and not feeling gratitude. Feelings that, like you said, it's for yourself. Doing gratitude is actually putting it in action in engaging the other person with the artifact, with the words, with the written word, whatever. It's all the same. It's love. I mean, it's showing another person that they're known and that you love them and you care about them. And in business, that's, people give lip service to that crap, but they don't actually follow through on it very well.
I don't think that people understand it. It's one of the foundations of the work that we do. We do purpose-driven leaders driving purpose-driven organizations, creating purpose-driven cultures. And I'll often say, I'll ask, what do you think is at the core of this kind of leadership? And they go, yeah, service. And I go, absolutely, it's service. But what is service at its best? And they go, I don't know. And I go, I'll tell you what it is. It's love. It's that woo-woo subject everybody's shitting their pants about talking about. But it is what it is. If you look at it, there is things you buy that cost you more than they could cost you somewhere else because you buy them from somebody you care about, somebody you actually are invested in, and that's why you do it. It's like we don't get how important love is. We like to go, oh, well, this is business and this is personal. Horseshit. This is personal, and it happens to play out in business.
Yep.
And yeah, exactly.
That's why Southwest and Chick-fil-A and all these companies, people, they're not the cheapest, but they're built. It's a culture built around love for people, and that's internal as well as external.
But that's the thing, right? I mean, that's what Tony Hsieh did. That's what all the top people understand. When I listen to Richard Branson talk about his people, it's the same thing. It's like it's coming from a place of love that is so rare, I think is probably the best word. It's rare. Like you said, a lot of people give it a lip service, but very few people understand what it is. And they may do it, and this is, you also brought up something important. They may do it externally, but not internally. There's a founder we were doing some work with, and we stopped because of it, who is incredibly generous. Incredibly, like he has a worker who's going through something, you pay for them to go to rehab, but, he takes care of people. He does all kinds of things that, gives a lot of money to charities and things that he believes in. He's incredibly generous, but he's a freaking miser with his own people. Like his own people, he won't even let them fly on his air miles, let alone pay for and this is a business trip. They have to pay out of their own pocket. And I'm like, dude, you are dead in the water. But, and he has this horrible argument. And it's the worst argument in the world. And the argument is, I've run this business for 40 years. I've made it make this much money. That's more than you've done. You don't get to argue with me. And my response is, well, the good news is you're going to be out of business. One way or another, you're either going bankrupt. And he goes, well, that's not going to happen. I go, yeah, it might, because you're actually destroying your entire leadership, your chain of command. But on top of that, people don't want to buy from those guys. He goes, well, I've got a great reputation. I go, you've got a wonderful reputation. But if you think your staff won't leave and tell people, you are smoking a fat doob. Right? It's all over because people talk. That's all.
And social media, it's amplified 1,000x. I mean, that's the.
And if you go on Glassdoor, oh yeah, my boss Fred is incredibly generous with his community. He's very helpful, blah blah blah. But he's an asshole to everybody who works for him, and I've actually seen that. And it's that caring that we just. I don't know why we have so many categories of I'm allowed to care here but not there.
Yeah, I see it with people. Go ahead. I was going to say, I see people with people in their faith or in their personal life. They'll be really generous with their kids, their church, their charity. And then when they wear a different hat in business, and I'm like, we should be congruent across the board. If we're generous in our personal lives, we should be just as generous. And in fact, what's funny is it comes back. Like, it's not like you're generous and it doesn't come back. I mean, the world's wired, whether you're a person of faith or not. Like, you reap what you sow. You put it out into the world, it comes back 10x, 100x. Like, and I've seen it. But it's amazing how many people, I don't know if they're afraid to be taken advantage of, or a lot of people that have built something significant, they came from a poor background like myself, and they didn't have a mentor, like model the practice of this is what it means to be a leader. This is what it means to be like, you can be generous and win at the same time in your business, with your employees, with your clients.
But I think you just said something powerful there. I think that so often that's not the equation in people's heads. Like, being generous and winning don't go together. It's like, well, I've got to be a hard line, hard ass, bottom line gal in business. That's why I can be generous. I mean, I've heard that argument. That's why I can be generous in my personal life. And I'm like, I get where their logic is, but it's false logic. And it's like, I think you're right. I think that very few people have that equation that generosity equals a greater win. Not for the other, but actually for you. Yeah, and I had a conversation with somebody years ago, and I said, do you believe in altruism? Because my listeners, my viewers know I have a very big spiritual background. I studied multiple different religions, from Vedanta to Buddhism to Gnostic Christianity to Kabbalah, the Tao, all these different religions, right? And I say, do you believe? And they're like, well... and I say, here's the simplicity of it. Even, there's even words for it in faiths, in religious faiths, because I don't believe in the religions. I believe in the depth underneath all of them, because it's consistent. But every one of them talks about the virtue of giving, the understanding of that giving, why that is important to us as human beings. And human beings all want to belong. And what is the way to say you belong? Is to demonstrate it. And how do you demonstrate it? Well, you demonstrate it in all kinds of ways, verbally validation, but also, here's me recognizing you. Here's me doing something to let you know. Yeah. And I think it's powerful. And I have a question for you. I'm interested. As a kid, what was the best gift you ever got?
As a kid, what was the best gift I ever got? I actually remember the gift I didn't get more than I remember the gift.
Tell us about that. That's good.
So for most of my childhood, I loved basketball. I mean, I love basketball. I mean, I was the guy that was the kid that was out shoveling the driveway in a Midwest winter. It's 0 degrees out, literally, and I'm out shoveling the snow so I can play basketball. And I always wanted a pair of Jordans. I was a huge Michael Jordan fan, which growing up in Ohio was like heresy, because like Jordan put the Cavs out all these times, which is ironic that I'm actually now a LeBron fan and bummed that he's moving to LA. But it was a good move for his business and his brand and everything. So I respect his decision, even though it's going to suck for the Cavs. But I wanted a pair of Jordans, and I couldn't afford them, and neither could my parents. And so I remember asking for them specifically one birthday, and my parents were raising 6 kids. My dad had 3 jobs. Like, we just struggled, and they got me a pair of miters, which is a brand nobody knows about. It's like a nothing brand. I have no idea what that is. And it's like, they're the worst. It's like, it was like Ames, which is like a Walmart at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I remember getting them, and I just was broke. I just cried and cried and cried. And so I remember being able to, when I entered with Cutco, started the business, whatever else, I remember being able to go and buy my first pair of Jordans. And my wife remembers this story well. And so for Father's Day 2 years ago, she tracked down online through eBay the original pair of Jordans I wanted when I was 16. Wow. and bought them on Father's Day, gave them to me, organized a basketball game in my honor back in Ohio, had all like 40 of my closest friends at a brunch, went to play basketball, had jerseys made with my name and her name on the back of them, all three of our daughters. And then that night I didn't realize it was all surprise, which my wife, struggles with gifting me because I'm a hard person to gift for.
I would imagine.
And I have a hard time shutting it off, the filter and the view. And then that night the Cavs won Game 7, first championship ever. I cried. My brothers cried. It was crazy. But I have those original Jordans sitting down in my office and look at them all the time. And so.
Man, your missus gets it, huh? She gets the philosophy.
Oh, she's super deep. I mean, talk about artifact and depth and story and pain. And so yeah, that's, it wasn't the gift I got. It was a gift I didn't get that. And, pretty cool to see it come full circle.
Well, you did get it, but it came, and again, one of the things that's interesting about what you're talking about, because you brought it up there, is if I get a card with Fred's logo on it, even if it's handwritten, it's nice. And I might say I got a handwritten note from Fred, and that's great. If I get a thank you card from Fred and it's got a piece of artwork on it that I've told him I like, or it's got something on it that's us, that is the evocation of a story. And really what I'm, from our previous conversation, one of the things I got that I don't know if everybody gets is that what you do is you catalyze, you evoke stories. That becomes a story in everything rather than, oh, I got this swag from XYZ company. There's a story here. And you told me a fabulous example of that to do with the benches at a baseball court. I was going to say court. See, I don't follow American sports. A baseball stadium. Is that right?
Yeah. It was actually the locker room.
The locker room, right.
It was the Cubs. So they reached out to us, and I'd been sending them gifts for 7 years. And so they finally reached out and said, John, we're out of ideas. We got this old wood that we're ripping out of Wrigley Field, which is like the baseball ballpark of all ballparks. I mean, it's historical. We don't know what to do.
I've heard of it. So
Wrigley's a big deal. I mean, just the field alone is and so they're like, we've ripped out the wood. We don't know what to do with it. We don't want to make a plaque out of it. We don't want to throw it away. We don't want to. So what do you think? And I said, you got to make something useful out of it. It's got to be an artifact that has history and meaning to it, but it has to have, most people don't need another thing to clutter up their drawers or the back of their closet. They need something that has some significance, a story to it.
Yep.
And so they said, what do you think? I said, I think you should make, a Bluetooth speaker out of so they'll be able to use it every day. And then they'll also have the piece of history sitting on their desk or at their home or in their office or whatever else. And they said, that's amazing. And so they said, we want like 500 of them. And I went around to speaker companies and they're like, you're an idiot. This is the worst wood on the planet. You can't make a speaker out of this. So I ended up having to bring it in house, re-laminate the wood, but we made 500 of these things and numbered 1 through 500. And they went out to, even the Ricketts family, who were billionaires, were like, this is amazing. And so they gave it out to their suite owners, their sponsors, any business relationship. I'm not talking about the players and whatever else.
No.
The people that bring in the most revenue for the team, and people freaked. And so we've continued to do that we've done it for other companies where we take a piece of their building or a piece of their foundation or it doesn't matter the item. We'll figure out a way to build it into the gifts that they're going to give out to their employees, clients, relationships. But that's opened up an insane amount of doors because like, oh my gosh, like that's insane.
But again, we can think, I think we have to get things, people often see so much at the surface level. At the surface level, it's swag. You gave something. But at the deeper level, no, this is something with a history. And more than that, it's the catalyst to a story. And we all know that story is the key thing in marketing. Story. What is the story you will tell? What is the story of impact that you've had? And that, if I've got a Bluetooth speaker on my desk that was from Wrigley Field, and remember, I don't follow American sports at all. But if I had that on my desk, I'd talk about that. I would talk about that.
Yeah, it's a conversation starter. And that's,
or somebody, I'd say, this never happened, but if it happened that I was stuck for rapport and I was like, and I'd say, do you follow baseball? Yeah, I don't, but hey, look at this. Right there is, oh, really? Wow. I mean, so it's getting that. And that's what I love about what you're doing is, like I said, it's not like I really wanted to make sure we didn't go down the road of like, this is gifting in the traditional sense of business gifting. I really wanted people to get, no, this is the law of reciprocity for sure. But this is actually about creating emotional bonds based on stories, which is what culture is, which is what real leadership is. And that's why I started with, if you're in relationship with leadership, what would it look like? And it would look like I would pay attention and give it what it needs to get.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's the beautiful thing of if you do the artifacts or the gifts well, it becomes a tangible trigger. Every time they use it, see it, whatever else, people want to be top of mind. They want to be brought up in, at the dinner table, when you're breaking bread with people. Like when you can give somebody a tangible trigger that they want to talk about you, guess where referrals come from? Guess where deals happen? They happen around the golf course, having cigars. They happen in those intimate settings. What's the tangible trigger that makes somebody say, you know what, you need to talk to this person? Then all of a sudden $100 million real estate deal goes down. It's those little things that make somebody say, I like them, I want to give them business, or I'm thinking about them in those intimate moments. And most people are horrible at that. They spend billions of dollars on a bunch of crap with their logo on it that ends up in a landfill versus finding those artifacts and those tangible triggers. Absolutely.
Now, you spoke about your wife doing this amazing thing for you with the Jordans and the shirts and everybody coming in. And it's beautiful. How, because I believe that life is relationship. I mean, that's the simplicity of it. How tell us about your wife, your family background, and I know you have a business partner. Tell us about how that is so tied to your success.
Yeah.
I think particularly if you're over 35, 40 years old, we've grown up with this idea of the self-made man, the self-made woman, I was the lone wolf, I did it on my own. And I think if you're saying that shit, you are just that. You're full of shit. It's not real.
No.
So tell us about how that's been part of your life is your wife and your business partners, your family.
Yeah. Well, I think it started with Paul, my original mentor. Like without him, there's no business, there's no giftology, there's no anything. Like, and he taught me, I mean, he used his own social capital to open doors for me early on. But I think my business partner, I met him early on, probably about 5 years into the business. And we tried to buy businesses together because we realized our skill sets were very different. And eventually I just got this feeling of like, I need somebody else. Like, I'm not a finance guy. I'm not an operations guy. And so I sold him half the business thinking it was to grow the business. And he ended up saving the business. I mean, he back in about 11, 12 years ago with, the financial meltdown happened. That wasn't what crushed me. What crushed me was I had hired a right-hand person who became a CPA, and they got kind of bitter and they ended up stealing from me, and they were also doing my taxes. So I went through an IRS audit because for 7 years my taxes had been done wrong. Had a death in the family that was really close to me, and kind of a moment of truth, and then went through the IRS audit. And then all of a sudden, like all the different real estate things I did kind of went downhill, and investments. And for 2 years, he didn't take a draw, not one draw. I only pulled out of the business $1,000 a month. And, but I avoided bankruptcy. The only reason I was able to do that was Rod took the ship, he took the wheel, and he said, I know where you're at. I've been here before with other entrepreneurs. I'll steady the ship. You go out, continue to build the relationships, cast the vision, sell the deals. We're going to make it through this. And without his, and what's interesting is when I sold the business, everybody thought I was crazy because because I sold 50%.
Right.
I treat it like a marriage.
Right.
Everybody's like, why wouldn't you sell 49%? I was like, because I view this as a lifelong business partner. And even if it, fails, like we'll figure it out, we'll split it up. But I felt And that was before I knew everything was going down. But when everything went down, he realized, like, all right from the start, that I wanted him as a true equal. And I didn't realize at the time how powerful that was. But without him, there's no Giftology, there's no book, there's no speaking, there's no global anything. And so I've realized the power of putting the right people around. My wife, similar situation. During that same time we started dating, when we got married, she made more money than I did for the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me the ability to continue on this path of what I believed in, and supported me, helped clean up some debt that I had based upon some things. And so she really was the pillar of strength when I was going through. Like, she saw the worst side of a leader and business person and entrepreneur, because she saw me when I was at my lowest.
Wow.
And she still chose to marry me, which is crazy.
Yeah, sure.
She should have ran for the trees. But she didn't. She was like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to do this together. And so, I'm not a perfect husband by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the reasons when things get hard or tough or whatever else, like, people are like, why do you have a business partner? Why are you splitting half of everything you do with somebody else? Or why are you, like, my wife is very type A and very, like, particular about things, and she's very dialed in. I'm just like, why do you deal with some of that stuff? I'm like, you know why? Because they have my back. I don't have to question who they are as a human at a character level. And I'm so grateful for who they are and what they were, because I literally would have crashed and burned had it not been for those two individuals.
But it's really interesting, John, because even from what you talked about at the beginning, growing up poor, it's very easy to run the fear of loss mentality. But you have maybe learned from Paul, from your mentor, that everything is actually about the opposite of that you actually put more in. So most people would have put 40, I'll keep 51%, you get 49, or I'll keep 70%, you get 30%, whatever it might be. But in doing so, you have found yourself surrounded with people who are also doing that. And this is one of the things I think people forget. My quote is this: you don't live in the world, you live in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
If your life is shit, guess what? Look in the mirror. If your life is spectacular, guess what? Look in the mirror. If you are complaining that people are tight asses, guess what? Look in the mirror. If you're saying, wow, people are so generous, guess what? Look in the mirror. And the thing that I love about this story that I think is important for everybody to get is that that's not how you grew up.
No.
So there was a change in mindset that's allowed you to shift and change. And then, because we all have this idea, I mean, we all know, or I certainly know from my own research, that the primacy of DNA is bullshit. It's not real. We used to think that DNA determined who we are. It's not. It's nurture over nature. I can show you the biology on it, the epigenetics on it. I've done all the neuroscience on it. I'm well educated in all that area. It's not DNA. Does it have impact? Yes. Does it determine us? Absolutely no. But at the same time, it's easy for us to go, yeah, just, that's how it is. I'm kind of like that, and my dad's like that, and my mom's like that. But the decision to say, no, I'm stepping into generosity. I'm stepping into putting more out there than is expected of me. That is profound. But the tipping point is this is what I want to ask you, John, is because when all that shit you went down, the things you just talked about, it must have been easy to go, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, of course there were doubts.
Right. So talk to us a little bit about that as we get towards the end of the show. I want you to talk to us because somebody out there might be going, I'm a very giving person, and I'm very generous, and I help all kinds of people and do all that, but I'm not getting any returns. Yeah. What would you say to that person who's at that place of feeling like, maybe I got it wrong?
Well, I think one of the books that was really formative for me was Give and Take, Adam Grant's book. And I think that what I've done a better job of over time is surrounding myself with more givers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you give to the wrong people or you give to a taker, then you're going to feel taken advantage of. And there's plenty of takers, there's plenty of matchers out there, but you start surrounding yourself with other givers. I think that's what I did a good job of with some of the masterminds and groups I've been a part of is, guys like Steve Sims, you hang out with dudes like that in different groups and, hundreds of those guys now, then when like you're less likely to be taken advantage of because they're like we actually have talked about, I have a small group of guys that our working version of this is called the Outgive Club.
Right.
And where we try to outgive each other and like helping each other and whatever else. And it's pretty fun to be around a bunch of people that are trying to outgive each other because, you're constantly one-upping each other, but it's good stuff. It's open doors and deals and whatever else.
Competitive generosity.
With a good heart. Yeah. And so, and I just had a conversation with a guy named Yannick Silver today about creating that group. You probably know Yannick.
I do know Yannick.
Yeah. And so we
interviewed
talked about
Yannick about 7 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just a wonderful human. And so I think that I've had questions, but I've also had enough evidence of seeing sparks where it has worked out or sparks in other people's lives where it has worked out. And I've had enough people, that have encouraged me or I've witnessed like, this is a 50-year-long marathon. Like nothing, like we're going to cross this bridge again. We're going to get through this valley. There's going to be other peaks and valleys and whatever else. And so I think I've had enough good people around me that have reminded me of the wins or reminded me that, that this is temporary. And so I've had enough good people around me, but there's been times where I'm like, man, I just poured myself out and did this and this and this. And so I think I've done a better job over time of trying not to keep track because that's where I feel like that's a trap.
Yeah.
I did this, I did that, I did this. And who knows how that's going to play out 10 years from now. So stop keeping track. Like, yes, we have to be strategic with our gifting, our giving and artifacts and whatever else. But if you're putting it into a timetable that's really short, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And I see enough wins. So I would say that people that are out there that haven't seen some of the wins, like that, there's enough evidence, there's enough data out there that would prove otherwise.
I think you've got to pay attention to that data. And I think that oftentimes we don't pay enough attention. I have a good friend of mine. There was a point when I was struggling quite a bit. And my friend says, I just don't understand it. You're so giving and you're so generous and you're so, of your time and your energy and your knowledge and, all the and money, whatever it is, you've done all that. And they asked me, don't you think that maybe you're making a mistake? And I said, you know what, let's just pretend for a minute that I could stop. And they go, what do you mean? I said, let's pretend I could actually stop being generous. I said, I don't know that it would work out better. I don't have any evidence that it would work out better. So here's the thing. Every now and then, I get this. I don't like it, but I accept it, that every now and then I'm going to feel used. I'm going to feel like somebody, like I'm some $4 whore and I got fucking bent over and used, and that's all there is to it. And that's a shitty feeling, but it doesn't compare to the good feelings because I cannot help but do that. I have to be generous. It's part of my nature. I want to help. I want to serve. I'm here to serve. And I think that is something that some people are brought up in an environment that teaches them that. And I was born in abject poverty. I did not learn that. I learned it at close quarters. You do it with the people who are very tight with you because you're watching each other's back. But to do it at a bigger level, that was something like you that I had to learn. And I learned it from a very great teacher of mine, Bishop William Todd, who was an Orthodox Catholic bishop. And we were standing on Hay Street in Western Australia. We're standing on the street and we're having a conversation in this busy street. And this little boy comes up, little tiny kid, and he's like all playful. He's like probably 4, right? And he's all playful. And he looks at William, Bishop Todd, and he hands him a 5-cent coin. And William says, "Thank you," and takes it. And I was standing there and I was like, that's weird. Why is he keeping the kid's money? And he said, we just carried on, and I walked a little further with him, and eventually I just couldn't bear it anymore. I said, what the hell's going on? How could you take money from a child? And he goes, I didn't. I go, I saw you. He goes, I didn't take money from a child. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I took money from the flow. And he goes, I'm open to doing that. Watch. And he takes his hand, puts it in his pocket, takes the 5 cents and goes to give it to me. And I said, no, it's that little boy's. He goes, no, it's not. It's the flow. And he goes, until you understand that, you'll be broke. I was like, wow. So it's not just the rhetoric of, put it out there, it'll come back to you 10 times. It's like understanding, don't block the flow. And one of the ways to not block the flow is to give. And I just, like, for me, that's like that's the lesson that's rang in my head for so many years.
Yep. No question.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when you have to be, in order to be a good giver, you have to be a good receiver. That's what he basically said. You have to be in the flow and be okay with accepting. And
sometimes that's the harder part. I think there's far more ego in giving, and there's far more ego in saying, no, it's okay. But getting your ego out of the way and not denying somebody else the gift of receiving, because there's a gift in, that they get to give. Like when I make my kids stand up to do the cards, because I know they're going to get something out of it as well as I am, right? Yep. Because they're going to get my full gratitude. They're going to get connected to the feelings. It's powerful stuff, John. Tell us, what is something you're still working on in your own life, in your own growth? Because I think that real leaders understand that growth is not, you're not there is no there. What are you working on?
I would say that at a core level, I'm a pleaser. I like seeing people happy. It's one of the reasons I gave gifts is I'm naturally an introvert, and a gift causes somebody to give me words of affirmation and have to respond. But I would say that being able to say no. I'm a yes. I'm a add it to the plate. I'm a doer. And because of having a wife and kids in a business and realizing like I don't have unlimited hours anymore. If I really want to have a wonderful family and a wonderful life and be able to do the things I want to do, and I'm getting better. I mean, as we talked about, I came off of 30 days being down at the beach. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been good at saying no. Right. And so I'm realizing the fruit of that, but I'm also somebody that has FOMO. Like I fear missing out. Because and I want to be there at the event and the conference and getting paid a lot of money to speak and all this other stuff, and I'm like, no, like it's okay to say no, it's okay. So that's something that I'm working on. And,
thank you, appreciate you sharing that with us. Well, we're out of time, and I would love for you to share with our audience two things. First of all, I want you to give our listeners, our viewers, something that they can walk away from this conversation with and really integrate. Like they can put a practical piece of advice that you would give to them that they could go do, preferably within the next day, but definitely within the next 5 working days. Yeah.
Well, I think that whether it's right or not, people are motivated by fear and pain versus more than pleasure. So people will ask us, John, give me the 10 best gifts to give. And I'm like, it's not really about the gift itself, but if I was to give you a list, I'd give you the 10 worst to avoid giving, because they all are tied to, in my opinion, they're high cost per impression, which means they cost a lot of money. They don't get you a lot of mileage, or they're not thoughtful. And so when I walk with my clients, they're like, no, show us the best. I'm like, no, I'm going to give you this worksheet to work through to remind you, your team, your marketing team, here's the 10 things. If you would just filter out these types of things out of your practices, you'd be better than 95% of the people on the planet from just a gifting. And so if it's valuable to your tribe, I mean, they can go download it for free. It's a PDF.
Fabulous.
We walk all of our clients through it. It's a free gift. They go to thegiversedge.com. They'll get that right away. And they'll be, a head and shoulders above a lot of other people.
Let me just write that down. The Giver's Edge.
Yep. The Giver's Edge.
Okay. Fabulous. So thegiversedge.com, go there and you'll be able to get that. So just, what's your final words? What do you want people to get? What do you want them to walk away with, talk about in the car after they've listened to this?
I think that the thing I saw Paul do, and we've kind of alluded to this, but people will say like, what's what was the essence of who he was, or why did it work, and what is that thing? And for me, I saw him, and I try to do this every single day, and that's to give more than is reasonable. I think every single person on the planet tries to, we want to be in this equilibrium. With a marriage, I give this, then I get this. And what I saw Paul was he just gave way unreasonably all the time to family, relationships, random people. Like, it's just who he was. And because of that, and it wasn't like people would say, well, John, I've done the gifting thing. I've done the gratitude thing. And I did it for 6 months. It doesn't work. And I said, I challenge you to be radically generous and to give more than is reasonable for the next 3 years. And you come back to me and say that your life isn't more full and your business isn't thriving as a direct result of you look me in the eye, then I'll write you a check. But you go and give more than is reasonable in all areas of your life. Don't hold back that 5% just to make sure that nobody takes advantage of you, and come back and, not 3 months, 3 years. I challenge, and I've never had anybody come back. And most people come back and say, you know what, I tried this with my marriage, and I can't tell you. I've had people write me letters from Vietnam and crazy places where I've never even been before, that they're putting it into practice in their relationships, and the relationships are thriving. And I think
fabulous.
Yeah,
I love it.
Excited
I
about
love it. It's been great having you here, mate. We'll certainly let people know about the givers. Givers. Okay, let's make sure we got the S in there. The Giver's Edge. We'll definitely make sure that goes in the show notes. Where else can people go find out more about you, your company, and all the resources that you have? Yeah,
I mean, if you Google Giftology, you'll find a lot of stuff. But I would say at a core level, I mean, the book Giftology is on Amazon. It's all over the world. It's Audible, Kindle, all that kind of stuff. I think that there's no Giftology 2 coming out next year. Like, we put every part of our playbook and mindset, heart set into that book. And I think that it's a steal for, it's our 18 years and for $20 or $30. And so I'd start there. And
fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's been a true joy, a pleasure, and honor. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I've loved our conversation. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Sal.
I hope you'll stay with us to the end as we say goodbye to everybody else. And I want to remind you, dear listener, to, as always, please don't just listen to the show. Do something with it. It's information's worth the hole in the donut. Transformation is the application of the information. Go do something with it. And remember, you can now chat about this show or any of our past episodes on Facebook in the Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast group. Just search it out on Facebook. Go in there. Tell us what you got out of today's show. Tell us the impact it's had. Tell us what you're going to do with it. That really matters. And of course, get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And if you want to put in there what you got out of this show, that would also be awesome. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive. In these fast-growing companies, often near a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only have them leave them at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember, you can get yourself over to the Matrix. That's matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need a www, just matrix, like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free to you for being tuned in regularly. Matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. And of course, play us on Google Play and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about what could happen in your business, in your leadership, in your life if you became unreasonably generous. I'm Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.